Welcome to the Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science. This seminar is in English. There is interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Hindi. To access the interpretation, kindly select the language of your preference in the Zoom bar menu. This seminar will be recorded and made available on the CIMIT YouTube channel. We will have an open Q&A session at the end of the conversation, and you are also invited to submit questions via Slido for our distinguished speaker of today. We will be hearing today from Rikin Gandhi, CEO of Digital Green and a pioneer in AI-powered agricultural extension. Rikin Gandhi will have a conversation with Francisca Mutetti, a CIMIT agricultural economist and research associate based in Kenya, specializing in seed systems for maize and dryland crops, with a focus on the uptake of improved varieties. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Brian Govers, Director General of CIMIT, to officially open the event and introduce our distinguished speaker, Rikin Gandhi. Dr. Govers, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Once again, welcome to Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science, the webinar series with the purpose to showcase leaders who are advancing equity and inclusion in their organizations and communities. Therefore, in this series, we highlight a diverse range of leaders, changemakers, and allies of women, underrepresented geographies and ethnicities, differently abled people, Indigenous community, and other often unheard voices in agricultural science and development. Equity and inclusion in leadership are essential. This is how we build effective, ethical, and future-ready organizations. By highlighting diverse leadership, by styles and diverse leaders who put equity and inclusion at the center of their leadership. We aim to provide role models and improve our own institutional capacity to have different leaders and different leadership styles. Because diversity, different experiences, and different worldviews make decision making better. It results in more innovative solutions, greater ability to anticipate risks and unintended consequences, and better representation of stakeholder and the final beneficiary our farmers needs. And let that be exactly what the world needs today. Therefore, in this series, we talk to CEOs, ambassadors, world-renowned scientists, but also community leaders, young professionals, representatives of indigenous communities, science communicators. Therefore, we invite in this series CEOs, ambassadors, and world-renowned scientists, but also young professionals, representatives of indigenous communities, science communicators, human resource professionals, project managers, and differently abled professionals. Today, I have the honor to present a true catalyst of change. He has changed the lives of millions of farmers, and he has changed the thinking of an entire ecosystem. A long-standing friend and somebody I deeply admire. Rikin Gandhi is the co-founder and executive director of Digital Green, a global development organization that empowers smallholder farmers and especially women to lift themselves out of poverty by harnessing the collective power of digital technology and grassroots level partnerships. This is actually giving a voice to those that are often unheard through digital technology. Rikin began his career at Oracle, where he received patents for designing linguistic search algorithms. Later, he also joined the Microsoft Research Technology for Emerging Markets team in India, where he researched ways to amplify the effectiveness of agricultural development globally. There, he created Digital Green to use peer-to-peer farming videos to increase the efficiency of agricultural extension services. Digital Green is now building FarmStack as an open platform to enable 2 million smallholder farmers across Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia that works with control and share their own data with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation today, the Gates Foundation, FCDO, Walmart Foundation, and many others. Rikin also co-founded Loop, a shared logistics to route farmers' produce to markets that spun off from Digital Green. You can see Rikin is a true entrepreneur, a little bit of a startup man, and he's a licensed private pilot. He has a master's in aeronautical and astronautical engineering from the MIT and a bachelor's in computer science from the Carnegie Mellon University. Rikin Gandhi. We'll have a conversation with our own Francisca Mutetti, an agricultural economist and research associate at our office in Kenya, specialized in seed systems for maize and dryland crops with a focus on the uptake of improved varieties. She's one of our strong voices with an interest in climate change research and economic modeling of its impacts on food systems in the global south. Francisca has a master's in agriculture and enterprises development and a bachelor's in agricultural economics and rural development. With all this introduction, I'm sure you're equally anxious to hear from what is a licensed private pilot and today gives a voice of those that are often not heard. True catalyst of change, true ally, Rikin Gambi. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that very kind introduction, Bram. Very so grateful to be with all of you today and to be able to share my journey and what we've learned over the years at Digital Green. And we're so privileged to be able to partner with so many of you at Summit to be able uh, to take it to the farmer and be able to leverage the technology to be able to amplify the collective impact and efficiency that we can all have. Let me share some slides from my side. So Digital Green began 19 years ago, initially as a part of Microsoft Research in Bangalore, India, with a uh, academic question, which was, is there a role for digital technology for small scale agricultural systems? We took a very wide view to what technology could be, everything from pen and paper being one type of technology to tablets and MP3 players at the time. And where we landed was using videos that would be produced by and for farmers that could take a one-to-one farmer field demonstration or training session and capture those farmers' own testimonials and demonstrations to be able to take it to many more farmers. Because as we know, these communities are facing all sorts of challenges, right? Fertilizer prices are increasing, market prices are very volatile, climate variability is affecting yields as a result of changes in hydrology and soil conditions. And there's a real need to see how we can meet these individual farmers who have their various types of integrated crop livestock systems to be able to uplift themselves and those around them. And of course, there has been this historical uh, conventional extension systems that have been involved in trying to train farmers, often at scale, with really large networks of extension agents, but still the sheer uh, number and diversity of these farming communities themselves in terms of demographics, agroecological basis, makes it a daunting challenge, even for extension agents who are often toiling in the sun. And some Government of India surveys finding that less than 6% of farmers actually report applying information from an extension agent. And so for me, I approached this journey, yeah, as I mentioned, 19 years ago. I had dreams of trying to get into space growing up. I wanted to, I saw these astronauts as heroes who were combining brains and brawn and had gotten, to this pinnacle of seeing the Earth from above. But as I reflected on many of these biographies of astronauts, one would often see that these farmers would see the world from above and wonder, why is there war? Why is there poverty? And some of these astronauts would come back to Earth and try to reconnect with the world and its people by working in agriculture with public schools. And so I never made it all the way there. I had my aerospace engineering degree and computer science degree and private pilot license, as Bram had just mentioned. But then I had some friends who are starting up a biodiesel venture in rural Maharashtra, and they had won some of these college social entrepreneur competitions. to see how could so-called rural wastelands become more lucrative by growing more oil-bearing crops like jatropha and pongamia. But that venture kind of didn't really take off as soon as I ended up joining. But what it gave to me was my first exposure to rural India and farmers in particular. And as you can see in the middle, I began to produce these short videos as I joined with Microsoft Research and their Technology for Emerging Markets group to basically highlight the testimonials and progress and prosperity that some farmers were experiencing as a result of applying improved agricultural practices with their counterpart farmers, since so many farmers are trying to exit out of agriculture and move their kids out of these rural places and into urban cities. I thought there was an opportunity to share the success stories of these innovators in their own right. These farmers are heroes who also are combining their own brain and brawn and in places like India are producing the second highest farm output in the world. And so they were my new source of inspiration. And just like I was watching old school astronaut videos that inspired me to study science and engineering, I wanted to film these farmers' stories so that other fellow farmers can be inspired uh, amongst their respective communities. So we did this work at Microsoft Research, and we found that we could reduce the cost of agricultural extension services from 35 US down to 3.5 US. We spun off from Microsoft as its first nonprofit spin-off, and then began to scale the approach to more than 8 million odd farmers across India, across East and West Africa, not by ourselves, but by partnering with local organizations, with ministries of agriculture that were already running extension programs, and where we would train extension agents and the communities to produce and share these videos amongst the communities that they were serving. And then COVID happened, and COVID basically stopped all the ability for these communities to meet together in person to watch these local language how to kind of videos. But at the same time, there was a lot of reverse migration of young folks, especially from urban places, who ended up going back to some of these rural communities that they were from. And they brought their phones with them. And we saw it in our own data on YouTube, where we had been publishing these local language videos by and for farmers, about 10,000 videos in 40 different languages. We had seen very few folks watching these videos online. But during COVID, we got more than 100 million odd views to this information. And at the same time, towards the end of COVID, uh, gener generative artificial intelligence kind of systems like OpenAI's GPT-3 came out, and we saw a great opportunity to flip the paradigm of agricultural extension, which has been for very long from research to extension to farmers. But now, as farmers are getting greater enabled with smartphones and data connectivity, these AI tools could enable with local language voice, text, and images these farmers directly, as well as the extension agents who are proximate to them, to be able to have this personal companion in their pocket to be able to triage questions and issues that they're seeing on their field and elevate the voices of these farmers to inform research agendas, policymakers, and help to connect these farmers ultimately with markets that they want to buy and sell with so that they can uplift themselves and their communities. Of course, we've all used ChatGPT and other AI systems at this point, and it's having such a transformative impact at a macroeconomic level in agriculture and beyond. But at the same time, there's a need to recognize that these off-the-shelf large language models are powerful, but they need to be tuned for the specific kind of constituencies of farmers, agroecologies where these farmers reside. There is, for instance, a need to tune these models for the specific vocabulary that farmers speak. The word biga in the state of Bihar in India means different units of land depending on where in Bihar one is residing. The word rust might be interpreted by a generic large language model as relating to iron, when it might more be meant for farmers from a crop disease point of view. And then there's amazing amounts of decision support models that CIMMYT, the CGIAR, and others, Ministry of Agriculture and research organizations around the world have been developing for things like site-specific fertilizer or irrigation recommendations based on soil and hydrology, terrain, and weather information, or livestock models for cattle dairy farmers to balance increasing milk production while reducing methane emissions. So one doesn't just want non-deterministic answers that these generative AI systems produce, but sometimes you want to actually provide deterministic answers based on ground truth and researched, validated information. So there's a need to plug in also those tools into these systems that these farmers are looking for. And of course, we all know that agriculture is so dynamic given weather and market fluctuations that can turn on a dime. And so there's a real need to integrate those real-time data sets also into these systems. But then the biggest opportunity is to integrate farmers' own interests and needs as they interact with these systems. They're actually contributing data about what kinds of issues they're facing on their farms or what their aspirations are. And especially for these models, which often don't account for women farmers who are the predominant source of labor and decision making on the farm, there's a need to bring in their engagement so that these models, again, are tuned for their needs and for their interests. And so the way that we do this whole process of integrating these deterministic models, these real-time weather information, the specific vocabulary and the local language, voice, text formats that these farmers are interacting with, is with a technique that's called reinforcement learning with human feedback, so that we can use the actual questions that farmers are submitting as they're interacting with farmer chat and have local agronomists, local extension agents to review them and to see what responses the AI system is generating, whether it is classifying a photograph that the farmer took for being a particular crop or a disease, and perhaps it's incorrect, then classifying it to the correct crop or disease or pest issue that the farmer is facing. Or sometimes it's about providing different option sets to these farmers. Often in agriculture, there may be some clearly not right practices to apply, like things like banned pesticides, for example. But in other cases, there might be a spectrum of different options that a farmer might want to consider, depending on whether they're an upland farmer versus a lowland farmer. And tuning the option set that for a given farmer in a particular location, in a particular season of the year, can really help to train these off-the-shelf language models to, again, become more context specific. And it's not just about creating a chatbot. Farmers really are looking for ways to establish trust and engagement with these systems. They don't want to just talk to a robot. They want to be able to ask questions like, what's the name of the farmer who has tried this practice before, and which village is he or she from? That's certainly what we found with our prior work with using videos by and for farmers. And so we've integrated video testimonials into this farmer chat application as well, because farmers are looking to validate whether a practice or a commodity is something that their peers are actually applying and seeing value from. And they look to see if this is somebody similar to themselves. Similarly, uh, one can't just depend on having a chat box that farmers are going to submit to, because it's often difficult to articulate a question. It's hard sometimes for a farmer to even know what's the name of the pest or the disease that they might be seeing as their crop might be yellowing. And is it a disease, or is it some other type of water or nutrition stress that is happening? So we also surface questions from nearby farmers so that if my neighbor is having a pest attack, then maybe I might want to learn about that pest issue too, so that I can preemptively address it. Or based on the cropping calendar, that I might want to just learn about particular practices that might be relevant based on historical uh, types of interactions that one has had with this system in the past. And also to create community, so for these farmers to learn with each other, to also be seen as role models within their respective communities, and create leaderboards of non-monetary incentives, so that these farmers' voices can be elevated in a way that has been traditionally very been difficult, given just again the sheer diversity and scale of these farming communities. What's been exciting is Farmer Chat now has more than 350,000 odd users across 6 countries: India, Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, Brazil, Zimbabwe. 86% of these interactions are using local language, voice, and photo based input, and which is really much more intuitive, especially for women communities of farmers who sometimes have lower levels of literacy. And whereas I mentioned, sometimes it's difficult to articulate a question, but just taking a photograph of an issue is much more straightforward. And we find that folks take pictures not just when things go wrong, but I was recently in Bihar in India, and some women groups were also sharing how they take pictures of their crops, even just to confirm that they're on the right track. And sometimes they're also using the information that they're receiving to negotiate with their husbands, who sometimes might doubt sort of their uh, abilities, and even with the local agro dealer shops who might be trying to oversell them on inputs. But now they have a more objective source of information that they can use to negotiate just the optimal amount for themselves. Uh, as I mentioned, we've been working on improving the efficiency of agricultural extension since our very beginning, 19 years ago. Our name Digital Green comes from the fact that we were adding digital to our very first partner called Green Foundation, that was trying to promote biodiversity conservation and sustainable agricultural practices just outside the city of Bangalore, and where we used videos and were able to share best practices featuring local farmers that other farmers were able to relate with. And we found that we were able to boost their adoption rate of these same practices that this NGO was promoting by over 2x. But what's been amazing with Farmer Chat, with this generative AI application that is available on the Google Play Store as an Android app now, and that where we have actually also negotiated with various mobile telecom operators like Safaricom in Kenya and Ethiopia, with EcoNet in Zimbabwe, that farmers can access this system free of charge. There's no data cost even that the farmers incur. That farmers are applying 60% of the practices that they're learning about in the prior 45 days, relative to 6% in the conventional extension approach. And the reason for that is, we believe, is because farmers are actually asking the questions that they care most about. It's not just what extension is informing them to learn or to be trained upon, but now these farmers are able to have greater agency and choice to choose. And sometimes in the past, like the videos that we would show would fall flat because perhaps in a women's self-help group, the particular practice that was featured, these farmers may not even have been growing that commodity, but now it's much more on demand. And on the cost side of the equation, the conventional extension systems that we've worked with have sometimes cost about 35 US to get one farmer to apply one new practice through conventional farmer field school or demonstration plot types of activities. Our video approach, by taking a one-to-one demonstration to many, was able to reduce that cost to 3.5 US. But that's also now reduced greatly to 35 cents with this AI-enabled farmer chat. And that continues to drop as these AI systems continue to get more efficient. with not just large language models, but also small language models, by caching the commonly asked questions that these farmers are asking, that really reduces even the energy and the cost that these AI systems employ. Uh, and what we're trying to build this whole tooling and reinforcement learning with human feedback system for is to create a flywheel of sorts, so that with every interaction with an AI system that's generating data that can help to inform not just improvements to the AI system, but also to inform researchers and science agendas and government policymakers to then plug in and develop new data sets, new decision support models, new functionality that can drive greater interactions with these farmers again in an iterative cycle that gets better and better. And we do all of this in an open source, digital public good way, in partnership with groups like yourselves at CIMMIT, CGIAR as a whole, and other country governments, because we believe that in our agricultural space, there's a great opportunity for us to come together and create this shared good that other organizations can use to not have to reinvent the wheel, but and can leverage for their own applications, for their own interactive voice response or WhatsApp based bots or other types of system work that they might be involved in, and not have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the vocabulary, the content, the fine tuning of these models. Those can just be shared public goods that others can build for themselves. Where we're going from here is that we're seeing about a 38% monthly active use of farmers month on month coming back to using farmer chat. They ask about per farmer about 14 questions per farmer per month. And we're obviously these farmers are looking for not just information, uh, when they might get for example, a site-specific fertilizer recommendation that is integrating soils data and weather information together with their particular location and time of year and cropping system. They're also looking for, where can I get perhaps the biofertilizer recommendation that was shared. And so we're working with other organizations, including these governments, as well as other NGOs like One Acre Fund, to integrate their catalogs of availability and price information for some of these inputs. And on the offtake side, integrations with information of local farmer producer organizations and cooperatives, where these farmers can aggregate their produce or process their produce for sale and to be able to make more money ultimately, which these farmers are looking for. And as the price and the cost of these AI systems continues to reduce, as I mentioned, to less than 37 cents, there's also an opportunity to think about the holy grail of agricultural extension, of trying to make something that can be self-sustaining. And so we're also exploring business models in combination with some of these telecom operators, as I mentioned, with Safaricom, with Econet, with some of the satellite providers like Starlink, and layering in win-win types of advertisements like this type of government information as well as private sector information that doesn't skew the objective responses that the farmers are looking for, but can enable sustainability for these farmers and create both enablement for the farmers to avail some of these products and services, as well as for these organizations to connect more efficiently and transact with these farmers at scale. And for me personally, having been in this extension space for the last 19 years, it's been amazing to see how farmers now can choose their own adventure of how they want to be able to develop and improve their own agricultural base. We've had stories of young people who've been living with their parents because they weren't able to find a job, be able to learn about a whole production process for poultry and learn about where they can source chicks and feed and set up a broiler and be able to make enough money to move out of their family's house and have like their own enterprise in their own on their own volition. And I think that's really the most exciting thing about this AI uh, revolution. There are, of course, like the concerns around hallucinations and the macro environment. But I think for these small farmers, there's a real great opportunity to place these farmers again more at the center of our food and agricultural system. And the impact that that can create is really significant. In partnership with CIAT, one of the CGIAR centers, these types of recommendations have resulted in really significant gains in productivity and income for these farmers, again, in a really short amount of time, while boosting these farmers' self-confidence and agency, which ultimately is the goal of agricultural extension, so that just like the astronauts, they inspired me in the very beginning to study aerospace engineering and computer science, and ultimately led me to farming communities in rural India, that we can create sources of inspiration within these communities, leverage technology to connect these farmers in a network that these farmers can learn and be inspired from, and be able to take their one small step toward improving their lives and those around them. Thank you so much, and I'll hand over to Francisca for our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rikin, for the wonderful presentation. My name is Francisca Muteti. I'm an agricultural economist at CIMIT, based in the Kenyan office, and I'm happy to engage in this conversation with you. That was quite an interesting presentation. Thank you for sharing what Digital Green is doing. What excites me most is not even the technology, it's a good one, but I do love how it integrates the aspect of inclusion, and especially for smallholder farmers who face many challenges, especially in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. Now, just to get deeper understanding of what you do, my first question would be, there's a rallying call around to have no one left behind. And with the access to smartphones, we do understand that most farmers, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, are in the rural areas, and they might not have access to smartphone. Now with the Farmer Chat application, how is Digital Green ensuring that no one is left behind and everyone can access the information or the technology that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you for your great question, Francisca. It's a totally very important one. And what we've found is that the rates of smartphone adoption are uh, increasing, even in some geographies like Ethiopia, that has one of the lowest teledensity and some of the most expensive mobile data uh, on the continent. But on the other hand, by negotiating some of these zero dating data agreements with telecom operators like Safaricom in Ethiopia, we found that we have more than 50,000 farmers who are across the spectrum of young people, older generation, men, women, who are finding a great amount of utility in Farmer Chat, and in some cases even like purchasing a lower end smartphone device that is not so expensive. And then the fact that they don't have to pay the data cost for the recurring use of voice or photo based interactions with Farmer Chat helps them to make it easier to employ. At the same time, for those folks who don't even have any phone, that's why it's still important to engage even with the extension system. So in Ethiopia, the Ministry of Agriculture has 70,000 development agents or extension agents who serve the country's population of farmers. And so we also work with those extension agents, and they are also users of the Farmer Chat application, so that they can then also triage questions more easily on behalf of the farmers that they serve, and then can relay that information in group meetings or one-on-one with farmers. And then the last thing I'd say is that our AI stack on the back end for the fine-tuned models, for language support, for image support that we're tuning with the RLHF methodology that I explained, we've also published that open source on Hugging Face and on GitHub so that other organizations who might be running their own systems, like in Ethiopia, is continuing that example, they maintain a farmer hotline and an interactive voice response or IVR system that doesn't require any smartphone. It could just work on any basic phone. And so those folks can also integrate those systems and those front end systems with this back end set of models that we've been tuning for the agricultural space, and therefore be able to still serve even a wider constellation of farmers across a multitude of different channels, depending on who has, access to different uh, approaches.
Thank you. It's good to know that even farmers who do not have smartphones can still access these advanced technologies and get all the information they need to boost their farming. Now, in your presentation, you mentioned about basing the technology on personalization using farmer profiles. That's a very interesting thing. Now, one of the challenges that we encounter during our field works is getting farmers to trust you and share personal information with them. And I would understand with this profiling, there's sharing of personal data for farmers. How do you do it to make sure that farmers trust you and can give you the information that you need to feed these models and even get to trust that the information they give is safe and they feel safe giving it to you?
Yeah, that's also a very important consideration. And what we've found is that one part is trust, and another part is even just the difficulty sometimes of inputting all these kind of like parameters. So what we've tried to move towards is not actually asking for a farmer profile type of information upfront, but rather just create value for the farmers as they're asking questions. And while they're doing so, having this AI system basically learn what the farmer is interested in, essentially in an indirect way. Because if the farmer is asking questions about, tomato disease issues and they're sharing their location, well, now I've learned a lot about this farmer. That I guess this is a tomato grower and they're in this particular place and they're growing at this particular time of year. So I don't need to like create a very structured way to develop this farmer's profiles. And in fact, I think this is better because the reality is agriculture is so dynamic. These farmers' practices and things that they're cultivating change, on a month-to-month basis. And so if we just kind of collect this data in a survey form, of course the farmers are going to ask legitimate questions about why should I share it? On what is the benefit to me for doing so? But at the same time, if we do it in this way where we're actually creating value for these communities, it can make a huge difference. And the second piece I'd say also is that especially when we share these videos even from like farmers to fellow farmers, farmers really appreciate that. They like to be featured as like local stars in their respective communities. So if we can make this like fun and engaging, it can really create a new opportunity for farmers that is really different from having to capture data in a very static and a formal way, which folks would legitimately kind of like maybe shy away from.
Okay, thank you, Rikin. That's a good response. Your organization or Digital Green has focused a lot on inclusion and especially making sure that women's voices have been heard. Would you say that you faced any challenges when it comes to inclusion, as we understand the gender dynamics at household level?
Yeah.
Women might not have a voice when it comes to decision making. So, what are some of the challenges, if at all there are any, that you faced when it comes to inclusion?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And historically, agricultural extension systems have often skewed more towards male farmers, often because extension agents themselves have been more male dominated. And what we're finding with farmer chat is that there is some of that sort of asymmetry still because ownership of, say, like phones might be more controlled by some of the male population compared to women. So we've tried to create some ability within the application to say that this could be a shared phone that perhaps both the men and the women are using, but they might have different accounts. And uh, sometimes women actually share that they prefer using the farmer chat channel because in an extension group setting, they might be a little bit hesitant to like ask a question when it might be a male extension agent and there might be a lot of other people around. But when they're in this private channel of farmer chat, they don't feel that they might be asking, a kind of a silly question. They can ask whatever question and feel confident that they'll get an answer that that they can leverage. And as I mentioned, we've had a bunch of anecdotal studies at this point, but where women have shared that by learning information from farmer chat, sometimes their spouses might doubt them, um, but they are able to kind of share information from farmer chat. They're able to try things directly on farm, and then prove to their counterpart spouse that like, hey, actually, we are very capable and we are actually making a big difference on our own, farm. And that can, it's hard to obviously affect these like decision-making norms in any short cycle, but we have seen that like it begins to nudge some of those traditional sociocultural norms in a way that enables these women farmers in a positive way.
Okay, thank you very much. So, in the 19 years that you've been in this space, what are some of the lessons that you've picked in the digital space in agriculture? And what do you think you could have done better?
Well, one lesson was or is that it's so important to partner with other organizations because one single organization can't address the multitude of different types of information and service needs that these communities have. So that's even from the very beginning, how we partnered with our first NGO partner called Green Foundation to working with various ministries of agriculture and CGIAR and CIMMYT types of organizations over time. Um, and then the second piece I'd say is really the importance of immersion with these rural communities. There's such a diversity amongst them that there's no substitute for just spending time with them and really understanding their needs and interests. They are super dynamic in their own right, and we need to be able to meet these communities where they're at. Sometimes where we've gone wrong, for example, has been not keeping pace with these farming communities. It was for us, as I mentioned, COVID that accelerated our realization that these farmers were way more online than we gave them credit for. And we were still sticking to this more offline video showing thing via the extension agents. And meantime, 100 million people were watching our videos on YouTube. And so then we started to pivot into, developing this whole farmer chat application with the advances in AI. But I think there could have been an opportunity for us to kind of keep more pace with them. And so what I'm most excited about Farmer Chat is that for the first time, we're getting a lot more real-time data about what kind of questions and issues these farmers are having. And the AI systems are not perfect. They have errors. They sometimes substitute male articles for women articles. There's a lot of like work to be done to tune these systems to suit these constituencies' needs. But the good thing is, like, at least you're hearing from like these farmers, and then you can prioritize what is broken and then how I can meet those farmers' demands.
Okay, thank you. And it's good that you've mentioned about partnerships because they are crucial in the work that we do. And your work is in Asia and Africa, and that involves working with different government institutions and also private sectors. So, what would be one thing or advice that you could give to someone in the digital space in terms of partnerships?
I would say that one thing would be to be really clear on one's core competency. So even as I shared my background, aerospace engineering, computer science, I don't have like a traditional agricultural background. So very clearly, we definitely needed to partner with the organizations who have that kind of expertise in the agricultural domain, and even also the trust networks with the farming communities themselves, because I didn't grow up in a farming community, so I didn't know them, but we had to partner with organizations who did and had mobilized women's self-help groups and other types of extension agent networks that we could piggyback with. So I think when it comes to partnerships, it's really important to be clear of like, what am I really good at and what's my core competency, and what is it that I don't have that I need to work with others to hopefully crowd together so that we can create a greater collective impact.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, partnerships are quite crucial. Now, my parting question before I invite Isabel to take over would be about just final words to someone who is in this audience. We have young people, young scientists, and also people who aspire to be in the digital space. And maybe someone is having self-doubts, second thoughts about themselves. What is one advice that you could give to such a person?
I would say that you could come from a non-traditional background like myself, and just spend time with these communities and other organizations who are working with these farming communities. There's so many challenges and complexities that exist. And there's such few folks who are really spending the time, that you have a great opportunity to create an impact and learn so much with these communities and partners along the way, um, that I would really encourage more people to come together in this space.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the quite interesting conversation. It's been really interesting getting to learn about what you're doing, and I look forward to learning more about digital green on your platform. Um, I think I will hand over to Isabel.
Thank you, Francisca. Nice speaking to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Francisca Mutetti, for having this exciting conversation with Ricky and Gandhi. So we invite the audience to participate in the upcoming open Q&A session. Be ready to raise your hand, open your micro and your camera. Also, you are invited to submit questions via Slido for our distinguished speaker of today. So I have one question already from Slido, and it is, while giving extension advice to the farmers, do you consider meteorological data and forecasts in designing the geography specific advice?
Yes, definitely. That is a very important parameter that obviously relates to so much of both pre-planting type of information for farmers to try to, based on medium-term forecasts to the extent that they exist, determine what crops they might want to consider. And then in season, so much information from sow timing to harvest timing kind of decisions are all related to weather. So we integrate different meteorological sources of information, some like Tomorrow.io to Open Meteo to meteorological departments as weather information. And then that kind of gets integrated with the responses that these farmers are looking for. So that it's not just telling them the temperature is going to be X or the humidity is going to be Y, but based on what the farmers are asking, like pest or disease kind of issue, how it might relate to some of these weather conditions, and also what the solutions are, how that also might relate to when is it going to rain, or, and should I apply some sort of remedy at a particular moment based on the weather conditions, is extremely important.
Thank you. How do you and Digital Green think about the challenges of high energy and water costs of using AI tools?
Definitely, we're very concerned about the water use and energy costs. Of course, like the biggest part of the energy cost is in the frontier development of the large language models themselves, when they're using, these big tech companies are using to generate the large language models themselves, that's when they're employing the most compute. Um, and so I actually think that there's an opportunity to say that, like, if we can leverage these large language models for greater benefit, especially from an environmental point of view, then we can kind of dissipate some of those upfront costs that they're incurring. And then the other piece is, as I mentioned, we're trying to move more towards small language models because it turns out one doesn't need these large language models like ChatGPT for the types of queries that farmers are asking. They're not asking to kind of create a whole report or something like that. They're asking much more it's tactical information like my crop is browning or it's yellowing. What should I do? And so one doesn't need like the full power of these very large language models. You can get away with these much smaller models. And as to Francisca's also earlier question, there's a real opportunity to move the small language models to people's phones, so that they don't even have to connect to the mobile networks if they don't have connectivity. So I think that's where the world is moving towards.
Thank you. What advice do you have for organizations like CIMIT who are trying to take it to the farmer in terms of embracing new extension approaches like this?
Well, Simit is obviously extremely strong in its capabilities for research and development for maize and wheat, farmers' needs of seed and agronomic practices. And the greatest two pieces would be A, to be able to, for us to learn from the latest research and knowledge that is coming from Simit to be able to integrate into the knowledge corpus that these AI systems are referencing so that they're up to date based on what you all are like learning and the decision support models and such that you're developing. And the second piece is that from our side, we can share the types of query logs that these farmers are asking in local language voice, text, and images, and would really be keen for Simit's help in reviewing what types of responses the AI system is generating, especially for wheat and maize types of systems that you all work in, to help to fix and improve the quality of the responses and the options that the AI system is developing. AI systems inherently are learning systems. They're not just a one and static system and done kind of thing. It's really important that we have this iterative process of engagement by the farmers, review by experts like yourselves, and then you can use that tuning to improve the models to drive greater engagement and ultimately greater impact for the farmers that we all serve together.
Thank you. Are you seeing any generational divides in the embrace of these digital tools by farmers? Do you think that enthusiasm by young people to use digital tools could contribute to increasing youth engagement and empowerment in agriculture?
Yeah, for sure. There's greater use amongst the young people, since sometimes they are the ones with these smartphone devices, and they might be more savvy to use an application like Farmer Chat. We have lots of examples of young people using the application and then informing their mothers, for example, of what they learned or what they are trying. And I think, yeah, they're a great entry point to be able to affect at a household level change.
Thank you. Now we are going to move a little bit about your personal. What kind of support do you cultivate for yourself to keep your enthusiasm high? Do you have networks to tap it into, or hobbies you pursue, or other sources of inspiration?
Yeah, I think the greatest source of inspiration for me is being out in the field, learning with our team, with the farming communities that we serve, seeing how they're using tools like Farmer Chat, but also looking at what else they might be employing that we can learn from. Also, for me personally, it was I've been doing this for 19 years, but about 2 or 3 years ago, I started to take a beginner farming class for myself, even though I come from this non-traditional computer science and aerospace background. And it kind of flipped the tables for me, because we were always involved in like educating or providing extension services to farmers. But to kind of be on the other side of the table and to be like watching, for instance, like farmer videos so that I could learn how to become a farmer was really revealing to me to know what works, what doesn't, and that's that iterative process for me of like learning and seeing what works, what doesn't, is what kind of energizes me on a day to day.
Yeah, very huge challenges in the field, no, for the farmers, smallholder farmers, medium farmers, and but yeah, and very good for keeping your enthusiasm high. What advice would you give to women and young scientists who may lack confidence to take on leadership roles? How can they overcome those feelings of inadequacy? Inadequacy.
Yeah, the journey for me started when I was just about 23 years old of age, and I had no experience in this agricultural space. And sometimes it's just about going out to an unfamiliar territory. And you might not have full confidence to begin with. So kind of bringing a partner along in the journey so that it's not just you trying to do it all can really be helpful, so that you're learning from like what other people have done in the past, and then observing how you might be able to create additional value. um, but yeah, taking that leap, I think for young people and women at any age, I think is worth doing. And in our agricultural space, as I mentioned, there's so many challenges and complexities that if you just kind of try to work on any one piece of this very big puzzle that we're all part of, you will definitely create an impact. It's just a matter of spending time and your energy and approaching it with an open mind.
Thank you so much, Ricky. In order to close out our session of today, what words of wisdom could you share with the audience as our takeaway?
I would say that the biggest for me is to think about how do we create agency and choice for each other. As I said, for me personally, it was videos of astronauts on the moon that helped me have confidence to study science and engineering and get a pilot license with those dreams of trying to become an astronaut. And that's the same kind of approach that we should try to take with the farmers that we're trying to serve. How do we create that same type of inspiration and motivation so that these farmers don't see agriculture as a last choice vocation, but something that others can be inspired by, and that can bring these rural communities together. It's so important for our collective food and agricultural system that we all depend on around the world.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Dr. Brian Govers, Director General of CIMIT, we thank Ricky and Gandhi so much for sharing with us your outstanding professional and personal journey. Thank you very much. Also, we appreciate Francisca Mutetti for having a very great, interesting conversation with you. And thank you both for being a catalyst of change. We thank and invite the audience to join the following Catalyst of Change Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science seminar in 2 weeks. Have a nice day. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.